Brock Lesnar is no longer under contract to WWE. Obviously, things came to a head clearly between him and Vince McMahon over this new policy when he wanted to start his new Twitch channel. Brock Lesnar wanted to start an OnlyFans, and so he decided to quit. He has not been seen since WrestleMania when he dropped the WWE title to Drew McIntyre. And apparently that's what happens sometimes. You know, they let the deal lapse. They always end up negotiating a new one because Vince McMahon does not want Brock Lesnar going anywhere else. But per PW Insider, they hit a snag in their recent negotiations. The only reason anyone even found out about this is because WWE Shop yanked all of their Lesnar merchandise. And that got people talking, hey, how come all the Brock shirts, how come all the Brock merch isn't there anymore? The Observer says that Brock's contract gave WWE the rights to continue selling his merch for a period of 5 months after the deal expired. And those 5 months now are up, which is why everything got yanked. So, of course, cue all the speculation about where he might end up next. If AEW really wanted Brock, if Tony Khan really wanted Brock, then they can make an offer to him. Tony Khan was asked about him the other day, and he said he had no comment about any potential negotiations with Lesnar, which is the right comment to make. The right comment is no comment. I don't see Brock Lesnar in any way going to AEW. WWE is still the place where he can make the most money, especially those Saudi Arabia shows. I mean, that's an easy payday. He probably made a few million, couple million from that 2-minute squash with Cain Velasquez. It's probably the easiest $1 or $2 million he ever made. But I'm sure he's going to try to play all sides against each other. It's what he does best. We've seen this before when it's WWE against UFC. Where's he going to go? Who's going to make the best offer? He's no dummy. Play the field, get the best deal. Maybe he fights again. How old is he now? 42? 43? Could always do one big super fight with somebody. That's always an option. I think we're going to see Lesnar back on WWE television once they start getting fans back into the buildings. And when he does come back, he needs to be paired back up with Paul Heyman. That alliance should not be ended. I do not want to see them broken up again. That is an act that needs to be kept together until they retire, and then Heyman can induct him into the Hall of Fame. Now that could mean they do an angle where Heyman is torn between his two men, and in the end he winds up sticking with Lesnar. You know, when they're ready to end the Paul Heyman-Roman Reigns alliance, and it will come to an end at some point. It's definitely got a lot of mileage left in it. Many, many, many more months, I think. But when we get to that point, in the end, he can choose Brock over Roman. Then we'll end up with Roman against Brock again. I'm not overly enthusiastic about that, but they can go that way with it. Or Lesnar comes back and Heyman has one guy on Raw and one guy on SmackDown. He's got Brock on Raw. He's got Roman on SmackDown. That could work too. But Brock Lesnar, believe me, Brock Lesnar is going to enjoy his extended vacation before he ultimately comes back home. He's coming back to WWE. It's just a matter of when. Mauro Ranallo is not coming back to WWE. He is gone. He had missed the last few weeks of NXT television. He missed the TakeOver 30 special to fly up to Canada to be with his mother, who is apparently ailing. She is in bad health. The decision to part ways said to be a mutual one from both sides. This was not anything that was acrimonious. This was not somebody being fired or I quit or anything like that. Unlike the last time he left, which is when I think he was doing commentary on SmackDown. I remember reading that he did SmackDown commentary for like a year and a half. I think it was, and I can't even believe it was that long. It doesn't feel like he was doing commentary on SmackDown for more than maybe a few months, but I think he may have been doing it for about a year and a half. And then there were the allegations of bullying on JBL's part, because of a comment that he had made publicly on some WWE Network show. He was kind of mocking Mauro about winning, I think, the award for Best Announcer in the Wrestling Observer Awards, and I don't know what other ribs or jokes he may have, said or played on Mauro, whatever the case was. But eventually Mauro came out, he denied it, but he didn't deny it. There was this long period of silence where he kind of let JBL twist in the wind. JBL became public enemy number one. Everybody was just going after JBL, and I'm sure he was on a blocking spree on Twitter. But he let him twist in the wind for a while, until he reached a settlement with WWE, which I'm sure said that he probably couldn't say anything disparaging about the company. And then he was sort of like, John had nothing to do with it. Yeah, okay. I don't believe for a second that it had nothing to do with JBL. There may have been other issues too. I mean, look, it's a high-pressure job. You have the Irish madman in your ear. I'm sure it's not easy. But one of Mauro's close friends, Boss Rutan, even came out and he threatened JBL. He threatened him on social media. And believe me, that's not Boss Rutan just reading internet reports on Wrestling Inc. or SE Scoops. He's very good friends with Mauro. He's worked with him on TV before. They're very good friends. He's not threatening JBL because of some erroneous internet report. So make of that what you will. But again, there was a settlement of some kind, and both sides agreed not to speak ill of the other, and then they brought him back. They brought him back, I guess, in what they felt maybe was less of a pressure environment to do the commentary for NXT. And he has not been at Full Sail in months. Once the pandemic hit, he said to them, I'm not flying to Florida. And neither was Beth Phoenix, apparently, because she hasn't been there either. The only person that they would show on camera was Tom Phillips, until Vic Joseph took over a few weeks ago. So now they show Vic Joseph on camera, they show Wade Barrett on camera, they're there, physically there in the building. But Mauro had a studio built in his home to do the shows remotely. That's what Beth does. Notice we have not seen Beth Phoenix, we have not seen her face on television in months. But I guess Mauro was thinking about leaving for a while, and once he went up north to be with his mom, he no longer had access to work remotely, which is why he's been MIA. But there was another incident with Corey Graves. There were a couple of incidents over the years. This was last year, maybe a couple of years ago. A couple of years ago with Corey Graves, right around Survivor Series, Graves was supposedly working his own angle because I think he found out that he was going to be working a Survivor Series match on commentary with Mauro, and he was trying to play up the whole brand warfare deal, and he made some kind of disparaging comment without telling Mauro that this is what he was doing. He didn't tell him, hey, listen, I'm going to say this, don't worry about it, it's all part of the work. But he made a comment that apparently offended Mauro or was disparaging him in some way, and he went into a depression. He had a breakdown. Mauro's been very public about his battle with bipolar disorder. All the hazing and the ribbing and the all the stuff like that goes on in this company, or even just in wrestling in general. I'm surprised he made it this long. I enjoyed his work. He had a very distinctive voice of his own, very different than the average WWE announcer. And I think the show is going to suffer when it comes to those big moments or those big main events not having him there. I have a newfound appreciation for him. Watching that Sasha Banks Bayley angle on SmackDown on Friday night where Michael Cole and Corey Graves sounded comatose. They needed a Jim Ross, Mauro Ranallo type call for that angle. Not announcers who sounded like they were sleeping through the whole thing, even if that's how they were coached. That was not how to announce a big angle like that on TV. But it makes me appreciate guys like Mauro a little bit more. Can they be over the top? Yes, they can. Can they be grating sometimes? Yes. Jim Ross, Mauro, they could all be over the top sometimes. But when it comes to those big moments or a big heel turn or just, a big spot in a match like for the highlight reel, you want to have somebody like that on commentary to really sell the moment, to make that moment, take that moment from a big moment to a legendary moment. And he's the kind of announcer who can do that sort of thing. But all of this brings me to Wade Barrett. Barrett and WWE are currently negotiating for a full-time return for him as an announcer on the NXT brand. Nigel McGuinness, who had been furloughed, is now returning to NXT UK as an announcer. And I like Nigel. I'm not saying that I didn't like Nigel. I don't want him on NXT. But what I'm hoping is that means that Barrett is going to be exclusive to the NXT brand here stateside. Of the two, I think I would rather have Wade Barrett on commentary. I think Wade has been great these last couple of weeks. He's got that great voice for it. I think he's great. And hopefully he'll get the deal done and he'll be full-time on NXT going forward. On Friday, WWE announced that they had come to terms on the release of Akam and Rezar of AOP. Wish them well in their future endeavors. These guys felt doomed once they took Paul Ellering away from them on their very first night on Monday Night Raw. Another NXT act that they just had to fuck with. They couldn't help themselves. They do this with every single person who comes up from NXT. Has to be tweaked or changed in some way. Whether it's the presentation, whether it's the music, whether it's the name. Vince McMahon has to put his stamp on it. When Aleister Black got called up, it was the little creak. The little creaking noise when he rose up during his entrance. Which actually, by comparison to some of the other changes that have been made, at least that's not that big of a deal. But it's the creak, or when Ricochet comes out, the pew-pew, that stupid cartoon noise that they had to throw in there. You know, or change, just outright changing people's names. And they always have to put their little mark on it. You notice that Keith Lee, right? Keith Lee. You always got to do something. But for AOP, they took their manager away from them. You know, there were rumors at the time, Paul Ellering, he didn't want to travel. You know, he's getting older. But Ellering came out later on and he said, you know, he tweeted, for the record, I love to travel. So basically that was all bullshit. I don't know who made that up. Now, if they had a better plan for them, then that's fine. Ellering was not the most active or, you know, verbose manager. This was not the Paul Ellering from the NWA in the 80s. If they had another Heyman type or someone like that they wanted to put AOP with, then that's great. But what was their big idea? It's kind of like putting Alberto Del Rio with Zeb Coulter. Their big idea was to put AOP, these two big tough guys, with Drake Maverick, who was treated at the time as nothing but a comedy character. Half the size of these guys. He looks like a little kid coming up to get an autograph from AOP. And they just put them together because they loved that. They loved those odd couple pairings. But that's what gave us AOPP at Survivor Series, where Maverick pissed himself. Supposedly, he legitimately pissed himself because the device that he was supposed to use to piss himself malfunctioned. It didn't work. So, allegedly, he may have actually peed himself. Now, that's a commitment to your craft. But this is what they did to these two big tough guys, AOP. They gave them a manager half their size who pissed himself on TV. The pairing with Seth Rollins, at least, that had promise. They were going to be part of the Messiah faction. They were going to be his heavies. But they were plagued by injuries at the worst possible times. You know, there's never a great time to get hurt. And it's not as if they were out 5 times. I don't want to sit here and say they were injury prone. I think that's misplaced. I think that's a misguided point of view. These guys were not hurt 4, 5, 6 different times. But, you know, last year, Akam had to have knee surgery. And then earlier this year, after putting them together with Seth Rollins, Rezar tore his bicep. The timing of this release is a bit curious to me because they've been off TV for so long. They were probably about ready to return, I would imagine. And then they just go ahead and they cut them. That I don't understand. Because it doesn't sound like they requested their release. So the timing of this to me just doesn't really make a whole lot of sense. But the injury bug, when the injury bug bit them, it just bit them at the worst possible times. Rezar is a legit MMA fighter. This guy is a beast. I saw a video of him recently I forgot who posted it. But they posted a clip of him, a 20 or 30 second clip of him in the gym training. You know, doing MMA or judo stuff, whatever he was doing. And my God, I mean, this guy is absolutely massive. I mean, from behind, I almost thought it was Brock Lesnar. I think he has the same back tattoo that Brock has. But he looks like he would perfectly fit into something like Raw Underground. I can't believe they got rid of him now, of all times. They debut this Raw Underground concept, and then they fire the guy. But he's a scary man. I think they cut bait too soon. You invest all those years in developmental and then a little bit of time on the main roster. You devote so much time to these guys, to trying to get them over and feature them. I think it was worth trying one more time, but evidently WWE felt otherwise.